Welcome back to the world of Clink. I'm your host, Colonel Clink. Today we're going to be looking at Warships in the Starcraft 2 custom map, and we're going to be looking at the Protoss Hardpoints. Now, the one little thing I'm a little bit worried about in showing Protoss Hardpoints is they require so much money. They're very expensive. They don't upgrade the same way the Terran ones do. So, yeah, they're a little bit different. Anyway, we're going to just choose the Eternity, which is the Protoss battleship, just to show you. Just because we've got lots of hardpoints. One thing I probably haven't mentioned with Protoss is you get 4 probes. The probes don't harvest as fast as SCVs do, but it means you got 4 of them. So you can spread them out a lot more. It means if someone finds a couple of your probes and destroys them, you've still got 2 others that are harvesting. It also means, like, if minerals spawn up here, you can just send 2 probes up there to start mining it and keep your other 2 probes here, so you're not losing any income. You've essentially got continuous income, which you need because Protoss stuff is expensive. Anyway, so you can see here, these are your standard Protoss structures. Warping equipment. So Protoss do not have boosters. Instead, they've got a local warp drive, which allows you to do a battle warp. Allows you to warp a small distance, it's about that far, to get you out of combat rather than boost. It's, I think, a little bit slower to recharge than boost. Is it more useful? Well, there's a lot of things you can do with it. Boost, you can always be stopped by enemy ships blocking your path. Battle warp, you can just warp over them. So if there's ships trying to block you or surround you, you can just warp straight over them, or warp around them. So there are benefits to warp rather than boost. The downside is it is a bit slower. It does cost 900 as well, which is twice as much as the Terran one. Again, though, it's your only movement. It's really your only movement bonus, so it's often worth getting. Lastly, you've also got fortified shields, which reduces your incoming damage to reduced by 5%. As all Protoss ships have a special ability, that is, they are made of balsa wood. You do not want to be out of shields. So, in this instance, I actually don't think this is a bad thing to get sometimes. Having fortified shields does mean that, one, it gives you an ability that ignores damage to shields that exceeds 500 points. So it basically goes, it's similar to the Immortals ability in StarCraft 2, where it goes, I'm gonna, if you hit me with more than this amount of damage, that remainder of damage is cancelled. So doesn't mean beat weapons against Protoss ships are bad. It just means that your overall damage is going to be less. Also passively reduces 5% damage to shields. So there are a lot. I mean, I'm not saying this is an option. I think I feel with Protoss you have got 2 different options you can want. Sometimes you're going to be wanting the warp drive. Sometimes you're going to be wanting fortified shields. Generally, I would say that there's 3 Protoss ships going from small to large. Large ship, I think, can benefit more. The larger ships, I think, benefit more from fortified shields. The smaller ships benefit from local warp drives. Again, just my opinion. Have a try with them. See what you think. Alrighty, so I'm going to be doing this a little bit different to the Terran video, just because I know the Terran video took a lot longer than what I thought it would. We're just going to be going into some of this stuff we're going to do the quick ones first. So I'm going to go back to front here. Stargate. Stargate is it builds ships, basically like the Terran one. As you can see here, it costs 900. All of the base Protoss stuff costs 900 by your little small turrets, which is expensive. The benefit is you don't need to build your ships with the Stargate. So if you're playing Terran and you're building fighters, they're going to cost you 100 per fighter. You only need to pay that once, by the way. That's all good. Protoss, you just select the fighter and it'll warp in up to your number. So you can see here that pretty much everything requires 2 psi, which is your Protoss what do you call it? Supply. So yeah, it kind of limits what you're going to be able to purchase, but essentially you just click on what you want to build and it will just warp in up to your psi limit from your Stargates. You will note here that there are 2 unavailable ones. To actually get the Void Ray and the Carrier, you need to get a Void Core or a Seraph Core. One note, this Carrier is a bit different to the standard Carrier. The Seraph is not a standard carrier, it does have fighters. It's also got lasers on it. In terms of what each one of these do, the Phoenix is pretty straightforward. It is your extra damage versus light. It's got a 25-second warp cooldown. It's basically the best fighter in the game. yeah, it's good, it's fast, it deals damage. Really nothing that can be complained about. The Scout does more damage to all targets. So it does less damage essentially than this one, but it does, well, it's about the same damage. It also has a faster warp cooldown. Note as well, just in terms of the attack types, this is an instant hit, this is a homing attack. It means it can get shot down. So just, I mean, essentially they're both standard fighters. I kind of prefer the Scout just because I prefer the heavier fighter against stuff, but the Phoenix is arguably better against light targets. So if you're getting swarmed by carrier fighters, I'd be getting this one. The other two, you got Void Ray. These have no other benefit, by the way, these buildings, than getting these two ships. Void Ray, I think, is the best Protoss starfighter by a lot. If you build just Void Rays, you have about 20 to 30 of the things, and they rip through targets like anything else. If you use Void Rays in Starcraft 2, you know what they do. They deal extra damage the longer they're firing at something, so against single targets, they just rip them to shreds. They're not great against lots of swarms, unless you feel really up to manually targeting every single one. Some of you probably will. And in that instance, they're pretty good. Seraph I find is quite lackluster. It is armoured. I should mention those two are armoured. I believe these both are light. Scout is light. That's why. So yeah, these are armoured. So armoured stuff like missile launchers can take them out. The Seraph, I mean, I think its real big problem is it's 6-side. So again, even if you've all got like Stargates across the entire thing, generally only have about, I think, 10 to 15 of them, and they just don't deal. They're too easy to take out than, say, standard Starcraft. You're playing with bigger ships, and they're slow. That's the other thing. They take 90 seconds of warp cooldown. So if you think about that, that's 4 Scouts to 1 Seraph. So 1 Seraph, despite its psi, is equivalent to only 3 Scouts. It's going to take 4 times the length of a Scout to come back. So yeah, I really don't go for the Seraph as a good option. Anyway, up to you, Monitor Vary. Similar to Terran, you've got 2 upgrades. One will just, they essentially just upgrade the amount of fighters you can have by increasing the psi. Your standard Stargate 2, which you can take on every Stargate, and your Fleet Beacon, which you can only take on 1. Your Fleet Beacon gives the ability for your fighters to use, what is it? Copy, clone? Can't remember what it's called. Phantom Squadron. I think it was called Clone in the original Starcraft. Phantom Squadron basically just, it creates Phantom Starfighters. Phantom Starfighters can get viewed using scans, but it essentially just doubles the amount of fighters that have got targets for them. They don't have as much health, I think they've got the same amount of health, they don't deal nearly as much damage. It just gives a hallucination, that's what it's called. Whoa, lightning. So, yeah, I would always upgrade to a Fleet Beacon as fast as possible. Again, gives you more psi to build fighters, and it gives you the ability to essentially double your fighters for a very short period of time, which means they're harder to take out. It also scares the heads, so psychologically it is really disheartening to see like 50 fighters coming in at you because you don't know if they're close or not. Last thing about the Protoss Stargate Fleet Beacon, which I'll mention, is the Observer. So you can build a number of these. They don't require any psi, but they only have a certain lifespan. Their benefit is they are a detector. They are the Protoss detector. So rather than sensor scans, you build observers. This is where I think Polaris are a little bit more complicated, whereas Terran can just go scan easy from the ship. This you've got to manually move your observer somewhere and just sort of sit it there in order for it to actually really do anything. You've got to manually build them from your ship. Yeah, you can have as many as you want, but they aren't permanent. So you've got to continually rebuild them. It just makes life a little difficult for Protoss to actually detect stuff. Not saying, and you've also got to build a Stargate to actually build them, which is probably its biggest weakness because you don't always want to be building a Stargate. Anyway, that's the Protoss Starport and their fighters. Isn't that fun? Just sell this to get rid of all of them. Can I sell it? Yeah. Cool. Next up is the shield battery. The shield battery is really I suppose this is where I'd say Protoss stuff is more specialised than Terran, because when you build it, it generally doesn't have many other upgrades to it. There are a few things to do. Shield battery. You build it, and you can upgrade it to a heavy shield battery. What does a shield battery do? It increases your shields by a lot. Now you will notice most Protoss Hardpoints all have a shield bonus. This is about the highest you'll get, plus 2000. The main benefit of the shield battery is it's got the little shield battery ability of adding some extra shields to it basically throws down a super shield on one of your hardpoints every so often. What it targets is really up to it. I think you can actually target it manually to stuff from memory. I actually don't use these, mainly because I find that I get enough shields from other hardpoints. See, like other hardpoints will always give you shields. Its main benefit is just protecting your hardpoints a little longer. I think on the bigger ships it's worthwhile, so like the Eternity I'll often take 1 to 2. The Destiny I'll take generally 1 on. Harmony I wouldn't bother, because it's just got so little hardpoint capacity to begin with. But it is useful, it will keep your ship up longer, but look, it's a questionable benefit because that's all it does. So, again, try it out, see what you like. I know some pros put 9 of the things on this thing, so, and they just use small turrets to actually deal damage. Up to you, see what you think. Next up, we're going to go to the next specialised hardpoint. You're going to get used to this. The Energy Lance. What does the Energy Lance do? The Energy Lance does lots of damage versus shields. Look at that. 300 damage to shields. Firing once every 4 seconds, which a weird-ass range of 22.5. This is your shield killer. It says short range. I wouldn't call 22 short range. I'd call it mid-range. Or I suppose right at the end of short range. And deals, look, it kills shields, that's what it does. It deals a decent damage against stuff once the shields are down. It doesn't deal a huge amount of damage. I think that's what like 25 damage per second, which is about equivalent to Terran artillery and cannons if you think about it. Its main benefit is against shields. It is also an insta-hit weapon, so that's its other main ability. It hits, it kills shields. That's its bonus. Yeah, I don't really think there's much else to talk about with the Energy Lance. Now, it is one of the Protoss structures that does upgrade into some different things. So you can upgrade into an Energy Lance Mark II or a Neutralizer. What is the benefit of either of these? So the Energy Lance Mark II does double damage against shields, again, which is great. A Neutralizer does extra range. It doesn't have as much bonus damage, and it now fires projectiles. So there's a number of different changes here. It also does additional splash damage. Its main benefit is that it burns ships' energy. So if you're against ships that really require energy bonuses, you want to be taking this thing because it really does screw around with them. Now again, it is a Protoss hardpoint, and Protoss ships often suffer from lack of hardpoints a little bit. So just be warned. You'll be wanting to... Not enough money. Running out of money. Run your probes. Get money. Before the game ends. The other thing you want to be thinking about... Actually, I'll just sell this thing. To not die. I think. Okay. So the other thing you'll be wanting to look at is... So Neutralizer is good that way. If you want to be just killing shields, however, the Energy Lance 2 is probably your better bet. Though the Neutralizer does do the same amount of damage to shields, it suffers from the fact that it doesn't deal great damage versus anything else. So, pick which one you want to go with. Now, the Protoss do have one special upgrade. If you upgrade to one of these, doesn't matter which, or if you've got multiple Energy Lances, Rain is going to make this video sound really awesome, I can just tell. If you upgrade to one of these things, you can then upgrade one of these to the Energy Spire. What is the Energy Spire? It's basically the big daddy of both of them together. Lower range, only 20 range. It steals energy for your ship. It is an insta-hit weapon, and it does 3,000 damage versus shields. If you're up against any, I think an Energy Spire is almost worth it on any Protoss ship. If you're up against even just one ship that requires energy. So we can go into more. I'll be going into more details about what ship those are, but stuff like the Ether, the Defense Cruiser, the shipyard, stuff like that, which really requires energy to use most of its abilities. The Energy Spire hates, and it gives you energy. It doesn't even matter if you need that or not. It's still great to have, because it's going to be both boosting your energy while also just killing other stuff. It gives you a bonus shields of 1,000, which is also really good. I mean, its main downside is just, well, there isn't really one. It does 200 straight damage, whether against shields or not. So it's lost a little bit of that shield killing ability, but it's still 200 damage. Weapon speed is 6, so it's a bit slower and less range, but it's got 3,000 shields, which is enormous. And yeah, it kills stuff bad. It steals energy. And does a ton of damage. So it's a good, and it's an insta-hit, which is the other main thing about it. I really like the Energy Spire. It's a good weapon to have, and as I said, I'd probably put it on every Protoss ship given the chance. You can upgrade that from both types of Energy Lance, either Energy Lance 2 or Neutralizer, so just remember that. Even if you've just got one, it's good. If you want to get multiple to kill lots of energy-efficient ships, say like lots of Neutralizers or lots of Energy Lances up against Protoss ships, perfectly reasonable. You're going to do less damage than with the other Protoss weapons, but it's a good all-round effect to just specialize in countering your opponents. Next, I'm just going to go quickly through these small turrets because they're probably going to die a lot. So first up, you have the Obelisk. So the Obelisk is the basic small turret for the Protoss. Range of 15, does extra damage versus light. Fires once every 4 seconds. So very similar to the autocannon, the base autocannon for Terrans. Its main benefit that the Terrans don't have is that it also acts as point defense, so it can also shoot down homing weapons as well as starfighters. It's a little bit easy to overwhelm in that instance because it will automatically fire as point defense first, but again, like it can get somewhat overwhelmed. The same as anything. A lot of Protoss would probably just say put the Obelisks on as your standard weapon, and I don't really think there's a bad way to say that because it's point defense as well as light target attack. It's a great little weapon. It can also be upgraded into one of these 4 next level turrets. So first up we've got the Charged Obelisk, which is basically your, as I thought would happen, the Charged Obelisk is the upgraded version of the Obelisk. It deals even more damage to light targets. Still a range of 15, still an instant hit, still a point defense. Again, if you're just going to be using them as point defense light or anti-light stuff, works fine. Yeah, does everything. Alternatively, you might want one of these things. So these are similar to the equipment on the Terran ships in that they do different things. Firstly, you've got a stasis chamber, which is very similar to lockdown launcher. If you've played Starcraft 2, you probably know what stasis is. It essentially just stops something from either taking damage or or doing anything. It no longer attacks. It requires ammo to use and everything to actually activate the ability. But the benefit of stasis is it can be used defensively or offensively. Promise, I've got safety switches. I'm not going to get electrocuted. I may lose the internet. That doesn't matter though, because I'm not on the internet. This isn't a stream. Hooray! I hated it. So, what's the benefit of using a stasis launcher is that it is offensive and defensive. You can lock down an enemy's weapons, particularly if they've got lots of small turrets, or big turrets that you don't want to be activated. Or alternatively, you can use it to protect yourself if your shields go down. Are they good? Well, they can't attack normally, and you've got to do it manually. So that's, again, a disadvantage. Is a good benefit though. Next up, you've got Psionic Storm. So Psionic Storm is, well, again, if you've played Starcraft, it drops a Psionic Storm. It increases the vision range, which is an additional little funky thing. So your turret essentially is increased vision range. So you often want to do Psionic Storm on like the frontal ones rather than back ones. It gives you the Sonic Storm ability, which if you played Starcraft, as I said, it drops a big ball of lightning somewhere, which does damage to everything in it. Yeah, its secondary bonus that I'm just going to mention is that if there's a stealth unit, it will actually unveil it when it drops. So that's what. Yeah, this is going to be fun. So that's what Sonic Storm does. I promise I did not hear little. I think the dog did that. That sounded really freaking close. Yeah, so Sonic Storm. Its main benefit, as I said, is to detect stealth without building a Stargate. It's a little bit iffy though when it does that, people have found. So again, your mileage may vary. It's great if they've got lots of little units, so against like a carrier or something, it's a pretty good counter against that. It also does lots of damage to against small turrets, so it's kind of a benefit because Protoss don't have a lot of splash weaponry. Again, try it out, see what you think. Again, doesn't deal any damage normally, you've got to actually fire it from your ship. Last up is the Ion Radiator. The Ion Radiator is kind of similar to the Vent. It increases your energy and energy recovery. Well, actually not the Vent, the Heat Sink. It also gives you the Revelation skill. Revelation is... it gives you the field of vision of enemy units in the target area. So it can be used to detect stealth things. Again, your mileage may vary because it generally only affects whatever you target. So it might, for example, target, this item, so it will reveal that bit, but if you don't deal any damage to it, it won't actually reveal the stealth. It can, however, be used kind of as a poor man's sensor scanner because you can target it and see that person's vision. It doesn't have a great range. Its duration's alright. Its radius is alright, but yeah, its actual area, like its range of the actual ability is pretty crap. I don't really rate this thing, but again, if you've got a really heavy, intensive energy ship, or you need something to detect stealth, and you don't want to use Sonic Storm, an Ion Radiator is probably the better one to go for. Again, try it out, see what you think. If you think I'm an idiot and I'm using it wrong, please tell me. But that's what the Obelisk does and what it transforms into. Photon turret has one option. You can transform it into an ion turret. What's an ion turret? What's a photon turret? Well, a photon turret is deals a decent amount of damage at 25, so it's got longer range than your Obelisk. I would say its main benefit is really the fact that and it does some additional damage versus shields. Although it doesn't actually say it does that. Protoss stuff's still kind of new, so some of it's a bit iffy. It does less damage than the Obelisk, but it does it at a longer range. What's its main benefit? Well, it can get upgraded into an ion turret, which does extra damage versus shields. I think that's where it's shield damage. And it disables the target on hit. So these are really, really good if you're great at manually targeting stuff, because you can essentially just disable a whole lot of weapons that the enemy has, and a whole lot of hardpoints by using ion turrets. So you can see there what it does. So it does extra damage versus shields. It's got a range of 20, which is a bit slow, and weapon speed 5, which is also a bit slow. So it's not great in that regard. But as I said, disabling target on hit is a really powerful ability, and the extra damage versus shields means you don't need to take lots of energy lances, you can just take some of these as your small weapons. Lastly of the small Protoss thingies is the anti-matter missile launcher. This is... I don't even really know. I suppose it's equivalent to the missile launcher that the Terrans use. It's a bit of a weird weapon. It's a homing weapon. It is bonuses versus armored. It doesn't have as much shields bonus as the other two turrets, and it's got a range of 30. So it's essentially your long-range missile launcher, doing additional damage versus armored. There really isn't much more to say about this weapon because it just does its standard upgrade. It doesn't have any funky upgrades or anything. It just becomes better when you upgrade it. It's got the same weapon speed as the missile launcher, Terran missile launcher. It's got more range, and does exactly the same amount of damage. But the anti-matter missile launcher I think is a bit flavourless in terms of Protoss stuff. It doesn't really do anything. There's no funky upgrade to it or anything. It shoots targets at long range. That's what it does. It doesn't do point defense or anything. It's a homing weapon, so it can get shot down. Try it and see what you think. If anything, you can certainly do it as putting point defense on your front, and like obelisks on your front, because it got shorter range, and your anti-matter missile launchers in the back. Alternatively, you can just make a long-range ship with anti-missile missile launchers all over it. Up to you. see what you think. Lastly, we have the phase cannon. So the phase cannon is the fun thing with the Protoss. It's got all the Protoss weapons available to it. There's a couple of funky special upgrades that you can also do with one in particular. It's a bit, and again, like all Protoss stuff, it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit specialized what it does. So your basic phase cannon, it does 160 damage, which is a big bit of damage. Weapon speed 4 with a splash of 1. So it's already a bit better than the standard Terran turret. I mean, you're paying 900 for it, you'd hope it would be, as well as giving you a 1000 shield bonus. It's a good solid weapon. Like, you don't need to upgrade the Protoss weapons unless you're wanting to sort of actually specialize in an area or you want to counter them. That gives Protoss a little bit of a benefit in that they can just build the phase cannons. They're going to be decent against whatever Terran brings out. Or even other Protoss, until you're ready to go into a different stream. Of course, if you want to go Starfighters, then it doesn't work so well. Terran's basic turret is not that great. They're going to want to specialize into something as fast as possible, so it does give you that benefit. What you choose is, of course, however, when you choose it, you're going to be really specialized in one area. So, first up, I'm going to go through them back to front again, just because the Rift Beam has a couple of different things available to it. First up is the Cadarian Monolith. So if you've seen this in Starcraft 2, it is a big-ass laser. It's an instant hit. It's got a decent range, which you can see there is a range 25. It loses its splash. Who cares? It's just dealing lots of damage. It fires slowly is its biggest weakness. I'll actually build this one just so you can see it. So it does 240 damage with a range of 25. Again, mid-range, solid range. Speed of 4, which is actually like pretty solid. That's sort of the standard range. 240 damage is a good chunk of damage. It is your instant target thing. So similar to the forward beam of Terran ships, with the added benefit that this thing can fire 360 degrees, it's a single target killer. I probably wouldn't go one of these. I'd probably go multiple if I'm using them, just so again you've got a strong instant target attack you can use to overwhelm ships' defenses and specifically strike down something. It's a single target murder machine. That's really what it does. It doesn't upgrade into anything else like pretty much all the other Protoss structures. If you want to kill stuff with instant targeting, it's great. I particularly like targeting engines, putting 9 on this thing and targeting engines, because the engines will just die regardless of what shield they've got on them. And it will basically instantly take down the shields as well, which is your other benefit. So, in other words, Cadarian, big damage, insta-hit, decent range. Next up we have the Scarab Launcher. So the Scarab Launcher is one of the more powerful Protoss abilities. It does a lot of different things. Maybe I shouldn't say specialized. You specialize into a versatility, which makes no sense. I'm just not even going to go into that. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. If you don't, that's great. Scarab Launcher. Scarab Launcher fires homing projectiles, so they can be taken out by point defense. It has a range of 35, which is the longest range gun, essentially. It deals a lot of damage. It gives you a bonus to shields, and it gives you the biggest splash radius, I think, that's in the... Bomb has splash radius 4. So, biggest splash radius available to Protoss, and probably its most easily availability to splash. Scarab launchers you do use if you want a long-range Protoss ship and you want to kill small stuff. It does an enormous chunk of damage. As you can see here, 350 damage. It fires once every second, essentially as soon as it's rebuilt. So it's not immediate, but still, it fires pretty fast when you see it. It rebuilds very quickly. It can easily, with a few of these, overwhelm point defense. And it's so fast firing that it doesn't really matter if it's like directly in front or not. I find these things are really powerful, and you'll see some Protoss ships, they'll just pack these on. It's very hard to deal with them, even with a lot of point defense. You do need to almost put more point defense than the weapon's actually capable of firing to really stop it. And you can see there at the start. It fires... actually didn't fire a second run there. It fires pretty quickly. The projectile itself is quite fast. I think that's probably its main thing. So it can... And it's got I think it's relatively tough. I think you need about 2-point defense to take down a single Scarab, which is why it's often trouble for point defense. But you can see there, it's firing. Its splash is good enough that it's going to kill a lot of fighters. Yeah, Scarab launchers are particularly nasty. They're probably one of the big nasties of the Protoss weaponry. But again, they do one thing specifically. They kill lots of small stuff hard. Is this thing better? Well, it can't be stopped. It's an insta-hit thing. So, have a play with it, see what you think. Again, your mileage may vary depending on what you're playing against, and you probably want to use these type of weapons to counter whatever your enemy's throwing up against you. Next up, you got the Power Core. For some reason, the Protoss Power Core is here. It's not anything else. It's an upgrade from your weapon, so I don't know why. It's pretty straightforward. It gives you extra energy. That's really all it does. Certain Protoss ships will find that more useful than others that use energy abilities. You may want one of these. It doesn't do any damage, so that's a meh. It does do more energy than the standard fusion core that Terran have, so that's its benefit. Yeah, that's really its main benefit. So if you need energy, your Power Core. Interceptors. If you've played Starcraft, you know what interceptors are. They're what Protoss carriers fire, and they are pains in the neck. It will build 6 little interceptors, which I'm actually going to go out and show you, because why not? Why not? Let's sell this place. Look at those little interceptors go. Whee! Attack, 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 attack. So each interceptor doesn't really do a huge amount of damage, but when you've got a lot of them, they rebuild quite quickly. Let me sell you one. Yeah, so there's the Scarab launcher. So 6 seconds to rebuild the Scarab and fires immediately. So once every 6 seconds for a projectile like that, very powerful. Anyway, interceptor bay is what we're talking about. So it'll automatically launch those interceptors off. Again, you can target specific hardpoints. If you build a lot of these, they will strip an enemy ship to pieces in seconds. They are really quite nasty. You can defend against them by building a lot of, if you're playing Terran autocannons or Protoss, if you're building obelisks, a lot of obelisks. They are very hard to defend against. They have a good range, range of which is, I should tell you, range of 25. So it's a good range. But the main benefit is, again, like, they're going to go out, they're going to kill stuff. You're not going to need to even be near there. You can keep your ship moving away, and your interceptors are still going to go out automatically and kill stuff. They're not, like, it's sort of hard to, how do you describe an interceptor? It's a projectile that can be shot down, but it's not homing, and it'll automatically go for the closest target. They're really good. They are really good. It's essentially like having a fleet of carriers in regular Starcraft. I can't really fault this weapon. Probably the only thing to say is that it doesn't work as well against small, like, it's almost the exact opposite of the Scarab launcher. Whereas the Scarab launcher targets a single area doing area effect damage. So it's a single unit that does big area effect. The interceptors are lots of little projectiles that target one thing better. It's kind of a weird dichotomy. That's really the difference between the two of them. It doesn't have the range of a Scarab launcher as well, but who cares? I personally think the interceptors are slightly better. But yes, you can counter them with a lot of either splash damage or auto count anti-light stuff, because they are light units and they're not particularly tough. Last but not least, we come to the Rift Beam, also known as the Phase Cannon, because that's what it upgrades into. The Rift Beam is kind of weird. It fires projectiles, which is one of the few Protoss things that actually just fires regular projectiles that can be dodged. It's got a good splash area, same splash area as the Scarab launcher. Its range isn't too great. It's got a weird range of 21, and it does some extra damage versus shields. It does give bonus shields, more so than what you'd normally have. So this is the Rift Beam. It looks really friggin' odd. Let's see if I can show you what it actually does. You can see there it does a lot of damage. It probably does more damage than, I think it actually does more damage than the Cadrian, but it's got less range. It's a much slower attack than the Cadrian, and it does extra damage versus shields. Why would you take this gun? Probably if you kind of want a balance between... If you sort of want a balance between hitting multiple targets while also dealing damage against shields, that's kind of its thing. I mean, it's a bit of a funny weapon, and it's probably best to just try it out and see what you want. Its real benefit, though, is that it can upgrade into the boost cannon, of which you can only have one. The boost cannon is... It's a forward-firing weapon only. Yeah, there's the rift beam going off. It's weird. You can dodge that. It's a strange gun. The boost cannon, though, is really cool. It's a really big-ass damaging weapon. It's got a good splash. It reduces the cooldown on abilities of the ship. So I think what that actually means is it increases the cooldown on the ability of whatever it hits. Rather than what it's actually saying there. It's got range of 35, which again, biggest range. Does a lot of damage. Gives extra shields to your ship. Its main problem is it's only going to be pointed at the front. It's also despite it's a projectile, it's a fast firing projectile, so it kind of negates the problem of a projectile. And I'll just show you it. I know I didn't really show all the Terran weapons, but I think this one's kind of worth showing. So there it is. It looks kind of like an obelisk of light. Command and Conquer nerds. 3,000 shields. So it's kind of similar to the what do you call it? Energy Spire. It does 480 damage, which is an enormous amount of damage. 8. Weapon speed is 8, but the ability itself, look at that projectile speed. It fires really quickly against targets. So it's probably going to hit even though it's a projectile. It does an enormous chunk of damage, like 480 damage against anything. It does fire slowly. It's got a little bit of splash, which is great. It's a good weapon, but I mean, it's got 75-degree angle of firing, which is about there. Yeah, so it's about sort of there. Yeah, not quite 90 degrees essentially is what you're looking at. So it's only really good on proto ships that are going to be firing to the front. So stuff like the Harmony, which is a small ship which sort of relies on speed, I wouldn't bother with it. The Eternity, it's not too bad on, because the Eternity the Eternity basically kills anything in that arc is where you really want the Eternity. So both sides and front. So it's fine to be shooting at the front. The Destiny is actually quite good on as well because it's a front firing thing. So yeah, it's sort of a decent gun. I'd probably say it's got less usage than the Energy Spire, just because it doesn't have that benefit of giving you energy. It's just going to do a whole lot of damage to the front. So if you're firing against single targets and you want to be dealing damage with a little bit of splash, it's a solid gun. Solid gun. What should I be building as Protoss, though? I would probably say in terms of versatility, the Interceptors or the Scarab Launcher are probably going to be your two picks. The Energy Lance being a specific thing you use against enemy shields. If you're having one of them, not a bad idea. Stuff like the Rift Beam, the Boost Cannon, and the Cadrian Monolith, I'd probably suggest as more of a situational type thing. They're not bad by any means, and building them, you're not going to be too badly off. Again, Protoss, as I said, they're kind of a weird mix between having something that's versatile against a number of different situations, but being specialized only for those situations. It's kind of a weird... it's kind of as if they've been built to be versatile in that subset, but not for anything else. Weird. As I said, weird. Protoss, I would say, more complicated for new players, because you've just got to get used to that, and they are expensive. You're going to have a lot of trouble reselling your items and rebuilding as Protoss if you're low on minerals. Whereas Terran, your basic guns, if they're not working, you just sell them and rebuild them. You only need to worry if you've built the further upgrades with Terran. Whereas Protoss, you're essentially building that extra $900 upgrade when you're first buying the gun. That's Protoss. That is the Protoss Hardpoints. It is slightly less than Terran, but they do sort of do a little bit weirder stuff, which is why I've taken a little bit more time on them. I hope that was useful. Again, I'm not the best expert on all this. Play around with them yourself, see what you do, see what you like. How they're different in versus games. Certainly, me showing you in Z versus Zerg is a little bit different. You want to play them in versus games to really see what they all do. And yeah, that's it. I'll probably be doing some more Warships videos. I want to do some on each individual ship to go over them, because again, I find that there's a bit of a lackluster, and well, there's guides available. Some of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with. But I think there needs to really be a sort of beginner's guide for each ship up there, which is why I'll be doing one as a video, and be doing some actual games to sort of show you what what I would regard as the best way to play those ships. And potentially, I might even do a few funky things, like showing you a carrier which doesn't use fighters, which is a bit weird, but it works strangely. Badly. It works badly, but it works. And some other funky builds. So anyway, you've been watching The World of Clink. I am your host, Colonel Clink, and I am saying bye. Yes, just bye today. Take it easy.